My name is John Urquhart. I'm a captain here with the police department, and I welcome you to our meeting, where I'm glad that you're here. What this meeting is about is to inform you of an individual that has moved into our community. It's more about education than anything else, because we want you to be informed. Make sure that you take some of the brochures and stuff here, and information here that's on the table with you tonight. And one last point I'd just like to point out, I also live in this community, so I have a vested interest about what goes on here too, and I also want to know, which is why I'm here. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Houston from the Department of Corrections, and she'll give you her presentation on what goes on with predatory offenders.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Houston from the Department of Corrections. I'm the Community Notification Coordinator for the Department of Corrections. I do these meetings about 2 or 3 times a month. I travel all over our great state of Minnesota, helping law enforcement facilitate these meetings. And I'm kind of hiding behind here. I don't really want to, but that way I can see the screen and not have to keep going like this and getting a stiff neck. So I apologize for seeming as though I'm hiding behind the podium. I'm really not. Although okay. Anyway, thank you so much for being here tonight. It's really important to be able to come to a meeting like this and hear for yourselves what's going on. Hear about the person that's coming here and getting general information about safety, because that's really what it's all about. That's the bottom line. We're here because of public safety interest. That's the #1 job of the Department of Corrections, the Coon Rapids Police Department. So hearing things at a meeting like this is much better than drawing your own conclusions based on what you might have heard from a neighbor or read online or seen on the news or what have you. So I really appreciate you being here. It's about having a conversation. Comes right down to it. It's about communication. What can we do? You hear this stuff, it's disturbing when you first hear it. What does this mean? What can we do? And hearing it and processing it, very important. Having a conversation. What can we do for safety? What are we doing now? Is there something more that we can do? So that's one of the main purposes of meetings like this. Yes, it's to provide you information about the level 3 that's come to town, but more broadly, it's to provide you with a broader picture of sex offenses, sex offending behavior, and sex offenders among us. And I'm going to use the term sex offender because it's easier. The official term is predatory offender. That takes too long to say. And most of these people are sex offenders. I'll talk more about the term predatory offender and how that came about shortly. So I'm going to talk about registration of people who are called predatory offenders, people required to register in the community, community notification, how that came about, risk level assessment and assignment, specific information about the level 3 William Meadows that's now in Coon Rapids, and then go over some resources, and then we'll get to a Q&A. So I would like to ask you to please hold your questions until we get to Q&A. I'm sure you came with questions. And also, if you're not comfortable speaking publicly, asking your questions, we'll stay after the formal portion of the meeting is over and address any questions you might have. So some terms really simply, really quickly. What's criminal sexual conduct? It's any illegal or unwanted sexual conduct or contact. What's a sex offender? A person who has engaged in criminal sexual conduct. What's a predatory offender? You hear this term. What does it mean? It's a person required to register with law enforcement under Minnesota law. So when the registration laws began, they were designed simply for sex offenders. And then the law changed and encompassed other crimes as requiring registration. And those were kidnapping and false imprisonment with no sexual intent. Well, they couldn't call it the kidnapper, false imprisonment, or sex offender law. So they had to come up with a new term. And that's where the term predatory offender came from. And that's why it's called the predatory offender registration. What's recidivism? A tendency to slip back into previous behavior, for our purposes, especially criminal behavior, criminal habits, patterns, activities. How common are sex crimes? This is chilling. These are chilling statistics. 1 in every 5 girls and 1 in every 7 boys are sexually abused by the time they reach adulthood. That's why talking about safety is so imperative. 1 in 6 women and 1 in 33 adult men experience an actual or attempted sexual assault. This is from a National Violence Against Women survey. These people have always lived in our communities. They've always been among us. It's likely they live, work, interact in every community in Minnesota. It's only been fairly recently that we're able to do notification on certain groups of offenders. Registration started in July of 1991. It's administered by our state police agency, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. They maintain a database of people who are required to register for law enforcement. Someone who's required to register has to register with law enforcement, any address they have, employment addresses, school if they're in school, any vehicles they have. And anytime there's a change in any of that, they have to register it. And failure to do that is a felony. Registration periods generally are about 10 years or the duration of probation, whichever is longer, although we're seeing more people now that are required to register for life. So if someone's charged, convicted, adjudicated delinquent for specific crimes, they're required to register. These include criminal sexual conduct, any sexual conduct involving a minor, including possession of child pornography, and kidnapping and false imprisonment, whether with sexual intent or not. So as of January 1st of this year, there are just under 17,700 people in our state required to register as predatory offenders. That's why I say it's likely that there's one in at least every community in our state. Excuse me. So I did a snapshot the other day, and currently there are 599 people required to register in Anoka County. 123 of those people live in Coon Rapids. Okay, most of those people are not people that are subject to risk level. They are people that probably receive probation. Ramsey County has just under 13 people required to register, just for comparison's sake. And Hennepin County, our most populated county, has the most people required to register at just over 2,500 people. Now, if you're holding those numbers in your mind, don't. These numbers change every day because people move in and out of communities every day. So they don't stay static. As a matter of fact, they've probably changed slightly since I looked at these last week. Community notification laws started in 1997. They apply to people being released from secure confinement after January 1st of 1997. So people were required to register released from prison, coming from another state, or a federal institution, or a military secure confinement, or someone who's been civilly committed in like a Department of Human Services facility. Those people are required to have a risk level assessed and assigned to them. It doesn't apply to people with only juvenile registration offenses. And it doesn't apply to people who have gotten probation. You have to have gone to prison or some type of secure confinement to be assigned a risk level. So the law has two main components. The Department of Corrections, my employer, is responsible for assessing and assigning these risk levels. Law enforcement is responsible for any notification that's required. And they determine the scope and breadth of notification based on the risk level, based on the unique circumstances. The risk level is assigned by what we call an end of confinement review. This is a committee of professionals. It includes a chairperson, a law enforcement officer, a sex offender treatment professional, a caseworker, and a victim services representative. And we have them all over the state. We have one in each prison. We have one in the Department of Corrections Central Office, and then there's one at the Department of Human Services. So we look at all these risk factors when we're assessing risk level. What predatory offense sentences does this person have? Do they have any other felony sentences? Do they have any harassment, stalking, orders for protection violations in their history? Do they have disorderly conduct reports in prison? How old are they going to be when they're released? Are they going to be supervised or not when they're released? Have they completed required treatment? And what would be required is chemical dependency treatment, if they're chemically dependent, sex offender treatment, and possibly anger management. But chemical dependency and sex offender treatment are the two main ones that people go through. Do they have any sentences with male victims? And did any of their offenses occur in a public place? These are risk factors. So there are 3 risk levels. Level 1 represents the lowest risk level. And the risk levels exist primarily to provide law enforcement with what level of communication they can then provide. So on a level 1, the level of communication that law enforcement can provide is fairly narrow. They can notify other law enforcement agencies, and they can notify victims and witnesses that have requested notification, and there's a process for requesting notification. And they can identify adult household members of the offender's immediate household if they feel that that's useful. Level 2s represent a moderate risk level. And law enforcement can notify agencies, institutions, where someone might be that might be someone that that person chooses to victimize. So say there's a 14-year-old female in this person's victim pool. Law enforcement's going to notify middle schools, high schools, anywhere where a 14-year-old might be. They base the notification on the particular pattern or history. Level 3s represent a broad level of notification. They're the higher risk level. They're the reason that we're able to be here tonight, having this meeting. So law enforcement can do notification in several ways. The one thing that absolutely has to be done is authorizing the information to be put on what we call the Level 3 website that the Department of Corrections maintains as a tool for Minnesota law enforcement. And that was done right away. Detective Plankers and I had a conversation. As soon as he knew this person was here, he said, yep, put him up on the website, and I did. They can have a public meeting, and thank you for having this meeting. They don't have to have a meeting. So if you get a chance, thank your police department. It's an extra step that they took because they want people to be informed. They can put something out in the media. They can flyer door to door. There's all sorts of ways that they can do notification. They can do social media. The one thing, absolutely, Level 3 website. So currently, we have assigned 9,565 risk levels in Minnesota. This is how many risk levels we have right now. 56% of those are level 1s. 29% are level 2s. And the ones that get the most attention represent the smallest percentage of risk levels that we assign. 15% are level 3s. Another snapshot. As of last week, there are 379 level 3s in Minnesota communities. So of all those ones that are assigned, there are relatively few living in communities. 379 may seem like a big number to you, but remember we have over 1,400 level 3s. Where are the rest of them? I can hear this question, even though you didn't say it out loud. I heard it in your mind. I would have wondered. They're in prison. They might be civilly committed. They may have moved on to other states. Some have died, not a whole lot, but a few, just under 100. And some have requested a risk reassessment. And that is a process whereby someone can ask that their risk level be looked at and considered if they can get their risk level lowered. And there's very strict criteria for meeting those requirements. But some have had their risk level lowered. So the Department of Corrections depends on research. Research informs us of what works best in offender management. We use what's called evidence-based practices, which is what I just said. Our research informs us. And so we did some research on recidivism. And in the beginning of this research, the recidivism rate was fairly high. I know you can't see those numbers because I can barely see them and I'm wearing my glasses. But the recidivism rate was 16.7% at the beginning of this research. So what we did was we looked at people after release from prison who had reoffenses. And it's gone down steadily since then. And we started wondering, okay, what do we attribute this decline in recidivism to? Improved practices based on research. We have better supervision now. We have stronger supervision. We have stronger sentencing also. We have measures in place that we didn't have before. We have registration now. That wasn't present in the beginning. We have community notification now. We have better treatment. All that has contributed to the recidivism rate going down. Higher accountability also. So at the end of this study, the recidivism rate was 2.5%. Not zero. Zero is the goal, but 2.5% is fairly low. You've probably heard someone along the line say, oh, they all reoffend, don't they? No, they actually do not. The recidivism rates are actually very low on sex offenders. Another study, a follow-up study, was done in 2012, where they looked at just over 2,500 people released between 2003 and 2006. The reconviction rate at that point was 3.3%. So we can safely say it's somewhere between 2.5 and 3.3%. Overall, looking at that whole study, it's 10% if you take it all in aggregate. Is that the right word? Another study looked at residency restrictions. And the legislature asked us to look at residency restrictions. At one point, they were thinking about perhaps having a law that said statewide we would have residency restrictions. If you don't know what they are, it's a law that says that someone can't live X number of feet from a park, a school, a daycare. And we looked at this issue and found that residency restrictions are not useful. They give people a false sense of security. And they don't prevent sex offenses. They don't cut down on the number of reports that the police are getting. So we looked at a little over 3,000 people released between 1990 and 2002. Of those, a little over 3,000, 224 had sexual reoffenses. Of the 224, not one had anything to do with where the person lived. Residency near schools, parks, daycares, etc. has no bearing on whether or not someone's going to offend. And no matter where you live, you're going to live close to a park or a school or a daycare. That's just the nature of our lives. It's not possible to find a place to live that's not near a school or a park or a daycare. And so municipalities have created residency restrictions lately, and they simply don't help. They give that false sense of security. The reality is that these people are already here, like I said in the beginning. They're people that are already living in our communities. They may not have committed an offense yet. And those are the most dangerous people. The ones that are thinking about committing an offense. The ones that aren't on anybody's radar. And that's why it's so important to talk about safety in general and not focus on the known offenders. because the known offenders don't necessarily present a risk of reoffending. The reality is these people who are committing offenses are already there. Some headlines to illustrate that: if the offense occurs in a school, it's possibly a teacher, possibly a volunteer staff, possibly a coach. I'm sorry to say, it's someone already legitimately on the premises. It's not a neighbor coming to the premises. It might be another student at a school too. In the daycare, it's likely the daycare provider's family member. And I'm sure you've seen these headlines. Okay, so like I said, the next person who's going to offend is going to be somebody who's not on anybody's radar. And the screen says, who's most likely to offend next? Looking at sentencing guidelines numbers, 93% of people with convictions had no prior convictions whatsoever. 7% had prior convictions. So again, it's not the known offender, it's the one that's thinking about it or hasn't been caught yet. Perhaps has been committing offenses, hasn't been caught. Maybe a family member. What's the relationship between the offender and the person that they choose to victimize? Mostly acquaintance. 60% are acquaintance. 26% are family members. And then it says 14% not known. And actually, most of the research agrees about 10% are not known to the person that they victimized. That extra 4% is up there because in doing the research, there were some cases they just couldn't tell what the relationship was. There just wasn't good enough documentation in the file. So that's how the 4% got lumped in with the not known. So talking about stranger danger is not useful, clearly. If only 10% of people committing offenses are strangers to the person that they victimize, we're missing out on 90% of people who are likely to commit offenses. So I don't know how you were taught about safety when you were a kid. I was taught stranger danger, nothing else. I was taught about the boogeyman, right? I knew what the boogeyman looked like. He didn't look like my neighbor or the teacher or someone I knew. He looked like a creepy, scary guy. And now I know that my parents meant well, certainly, but we missed out on a lot of what I could have been learning about how to take care of myself. What's the age of people victimized? If you glance at this pie chart, it looks like it's really evenly distributed, doesn't it? It's not actually. People who are 18 and over represent 33% of people victimized. People who are 0 to 12 represent 34%. And people 13 to 17, a much narrower window, represent a full 33% of people victimized. Another stark way of looking at this, clearly 2/3 of people victimized are victimized before they reach the age of 18. Okay. William Meadows is the level 3 that's moved to Coon Rapids. These are fairly recent photos of him. He's 40 years old. It's a physical description of him. He's living on the 9800 block of Palm Street Northwest. And no, I'm sorry, we can't give you his exact address. For public safety reasons, we can only give you an approximate address. His history is that he has adult convictions for criminal sexual conduct involving adult female victims. He has a history of domestic violence and chemical abuse. In 2002, he has a conviction for criminal sexual conduct in the 4th degree and 1st degree burglary in Stearns County. This involved an adult female. He was not known to her. He gained access to her by breaking into her home. The offense involved sexual touching. he received a 33-month prison sentence. Right around the same time, he had another very similar offense. Burglary. He was charged with criminal sexual conduct. We say crim sex in the biz. I have to get that out of my head. He was charged with criminal sexual conduct and burglary. He was convicted of burglary. Still Stearns County. Almost an identical scenario. Not known to the person, broke into her home. He received a 45-month prison sentence. He has other felony history of domestic assault, both Ramsey County in 2008 and 2010. So he came to prison for the burglaries and the criminal sexual conduct in 2002. He was released in 2004 as a level 2. He returned to prison due to a supervision failure. So you'll see people come back to prison not for reoffending, but because they violated some condition of release. They're on very strict conditions of release. And so, especially in the beginning, you'll see they may come back. And he came back basically for not being accountable for what he needed to be doing and using and possessing intoxicants. So whenever someone comes back to prison that has a risk level, we have a process. First, there's a hearing to determine, did the violation occur? What are we going to do if the violation did occur? Can we send them back out into the community with stricter conditions of release? Or should we be bringing them back to prison for a period of time? And there's very strict guidelines on all that, how long they come back to prison, depending on the violation, etc. We also look at everyone that comes back to say, do they need a new risk level? And we look at that. And in this case, we decided, yep, he needs a new risk level. So he had a new assessment done. And in his case, when he committed the offenses, he was using at the time, so any use is going to be a big red flag. That's going to be something that's going to say to the committee, okay, we definitely need to do a new assessment on this person. So he came out again as a level 3. Then he came back, and not for failure to follow supervision conditions, but he had a new sentence for domestic assault in 2010. He's been in and out for other supervision failures, finally being released in September of 2016, still a level 3. And in October of 2016, his sentence ended, so his supervision ended. So he had completed his sentence and was released from prison. So, as I said, his sentence ended in October of 2016. I'd like to tell you he's on supervision, but he's not. He's required to register, however, and he's a level 3. So 2 high visibility components of his life. He's required to register until August 31st of 2026. And that's because he came out of prison in 2016. Anytime you get reincarcerated, your registration period starts over. So say he had a registration period that started in 2004 initially, he could have been done with registration in 2014, but he came back to prison. So his registration period started over. So coming out in 2016 would make his registration go to 2026. That's how that works. So he's in transition. He's been in transition, moving since October this time. Minnesota law allows these people to live in the community, to go about his business, whatever he needs to do. Go to work, go to treatment if he's in treatment, go shopping, anything anybody else can do. As long as he maintains his registration and stays law-abiding. But you can assist in monitoring behavior and activities where appropriate. If you see him doing something you think looks suspicious, call Coon Rapids PD and ask. But remember, he's not on supervision. So if you see him going to a bar or going to a liquor store or something like that, that's not anything that anybody can keep him from doing. But if you see, I don't know, you know what? Forget about Mr. Meadows. If you see anybody doing anything suspicious, call 911. You see that there's a sign in the police foyer. It says something like, if you see something, say something. Trust your gut. If you see something that doesn't look quite right, pick up the phone. Let the police investigate it. It's probably not going to be Mr. Meadows that you see doing something suspicious. I'm actually more concerned about his history of domestic violence at this point in his life because that's what he's got most recently. So I'm concerned about whoever he may be in a relationship with, frankly, as being at risk. Okay. New logo. When did you get the new logo?
4 years ago.
Okay. Since I lived here. I lived here for 16 years. You had raccoons for a while. Anyway, I digress. I miss going to El Loro, though. It's just not on Thursday nights. Like I said, if you see something, say something. Pick up the phone. This is your community. That's why you're here. You're the eyes and ears of the community. You care about your community clearly. You care deeply. I think you're up, Jane. Yes. And I'm very pleased to introduce Jane Straub from the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center. And I'm going to hand, do you want to use that one?
I have a
okay.
mic.
Should I turn this off?
I always feel like I should sing, but I cannot, so that would not be doing that. I added an extra slide here.
Oh,
Just
now?
just today,
Okay.
yeah. All right. So again, I'd like to echo Sarah. Thank you so much for being here. We try to come to all community notification meetings when we are invited because we think this is a wonderful opportunity to talk about prevention. And when Sarah was talking about the registration, that also is known as Jacob's Law. So Jacob's Law was the reason why we have registration of sex offenders, and Megan's Law is why we have the community notification. So we really take it very personally to talk about these things. And we really want to be talking about prevention. I added a slide because this case is a little bit different than the normal cases that we come and talk about. So sorry, I've got a whole bunch of things going on here. So one, again, I'm going to echo Sarah. Sex offenders have always been here. There's something about our culture and our society where we grow sex offenders. This is not a new thing. We now talk about them more often than we did. And if there is anyone in this room who is a victim, I want to say thank you for being here. And what happened to you should have never happened. We certainly are doing a better job of allowing people to disclose and having safe disclosure. We did not always do that well. But we are learning what we need to be doing. Sex offenders have been here and people have been victimized, and we need to be able to talk about that. This is not something new with Mr. Meadows. So again, a typical community notification meeting that we come to is an offender who has offended against children, and he's been known to the children. This case is not that case. Mr. Meadows has some offenses against adults who he did not know. So that's really scary to us. That actually is a very rare case. Those are the rare cases. Typically, offenders know their victims. So again, I want to talk about, we have Mr. Meadows here, but tonight hopefully we can broaden our prevention, because this is scary here, but again, as Sarah said, we have so many other people that we need to be thinking about. So Jacob's case, again, we look at Jacob's case and we think, oh my gosh, Heinrich, he just came out of the woodwork. Yes, he was a stranger to Jacob, but there were signs. There were things going on. There were missed opportunities for intervention and prevention. And when we look back at that case, we say we could have, should have, would have done things differently if we know what we know today. Same with Mr. Meadows. I don't know his childhood. I don't know things growing up. But I am guessing there were people in his life that at one point said, something's just not right here, right? That behavior or this behavior. And a lot of times with sex offenders, that's what we see. You know what? There was that time that person did this. There was that time that person said this, right? And sex offenders are slowly kind of growing into what they're doing. And sometimes we just don't want to see the signs. And especially if it's someone in our family, or someone that we know, or someone that goes to our faith community, or someone that we trust. And that's really what we need to do for prevention. We need to look out with the people around us and say, you know what, I really don't like how that person is behaving with that child. I really don't like how that person looks at me. I really don't like what that person is saying, making jokes about domestic violence or rape. And these are the things that we need to do to create a culture that is safe, not a culture that is safe to offend. But what we hear time and time again is offenders say, I just kept waiting for someone to say something to me. People were seeing me doing these things and no one ever said anything. So we're going to be the society that says, I see you and what you're doing is not okay. Again, so we kind of have this not me, right? I don't know any sex offenders. There aren't any sex offenders in my neighborhood or my family or my community. And yes, we do. We just may not know that they're sex offenders. So again, I want us to be saying, I don't care who you are, what your title is, what everybody else thinks about you. If you are doing something that's making me feel uncomfortable or something that I don't like, I'm going to pay attention to that. And that's what we need people to do. And not just sex offense crimes, but really any crime that happens. And then again, we have this, well, I never would have guessed it would have been that person, right? That's the first reaction that we get. And then we get the people that say, but I do remember this happening. And I really want people to be thinking about that. And when I think of this, I think of Jerry Sandusky, right? Oh my gosh, he was such a great coach. He had a wonderful nonprofit for kids, right? And then we had so many people saying, but this, and this. All right, and again, we need to hold people accountable. We need to call people out. Jokes about violence, jokes about hurting children, jokes about sexual violence, domestic violence, sexual harassment, they're not funny. And what they do is they create a culture where people think those behaviors are okay. And we're just going to say, absolutely not. Those behaviors are not okay. So again, for community notification, this part is about what do I say to the kids. So if any of you have children, grandkids, neighbors, please take a lot of our flyers, information. You'll have information for our website. We know that kids and people make better decisions when they're smart, not when they're scared. So this is really what we're trying to do with this part of the presentation. It's a kid's job to be a kid, not a kid's job to not get offended by people. As an adult, we're going to vet people. We're going to be very careful about who we invite through the front door. Because again, we know for kids, they tend to be harmed by someone they know, someone they trust, and someone that we have allowed access to our children. So we're going to do a better job about that. Sarah talked about the boogeyman, right? Stranger. Kids have a very, if you tell them to draw a picture of a stranger, you're going to get a picture of a monster, right? That's not who hurts us. right? It's not a monster, it's an actual person. And then they get mixed messages, right? If you're hurt, you need to, go to a law enforcement or to a fireman. Those are technically strangers, right? If you're lost in a store, you need to go to somebody that works at the store. Well, that's a stranger, right? So we need to teach kids how to ask for help. It's not a stranger, it's that person's behavior. And we have children and adults, frankly, who are helped by strangers every day. There's a lot of good people in this world, right? So we can't have kids just be afraid of everybody that they don't know and then have a false sense of security with, Uncle Pete that makes them feel really uncomfortable. Well, he's not a stranger, so it must be okay. All right. Oh, go ahead. So again, just talking about safety rules, and I think for adults too, does this make me feel uncomfortable? Does something not feel right? And we are lucky as human beings to have this instinct, and sometimes what we do is we try to minimize it. Oh, I'm just overreacting. I think I'm misunderstood. I'm just making a big deal out of this. And we really want to foster this in kids to go, when that feeling is going off, let's take a minute and pause and just think about why we're having it. And even as adults, we try to rush through these. Oh, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. Right? So we're just going to take a moment and go, wait a minute. What did that person just say? What did that person just do? And why is it making me feel uncomfortable? And what a gift for our children to have as well. So lures, kids are looking for love. Kids are looking for someone that pays attention to them. And if they don't get it from the people that they should be getting it from, unfortunately, there are offenders out there who are looking for kids. They're looking for kids who need that. And offenders are very good at finding that. So we need to be the ones in the community that are saying, I'm going to be taking care of these kids. I'm going to be looking out for these kids. I'm a trusted adult. I'm somebody that child can come to if they need somebody. And sometimes I get ahead of myself. But we have something called the net of 5. We want every child to have 5 adults that they can go to if they have a problem, if they have a question, if they need something. And the reason we like 5 is 1, because little kids can draw it. They can trace their hand, and then they can name all the people. And another reason is the person, not everybody knows everything, so you may go to this person, and for some reason they can't help you. Well, you have 4 other people you can go to. And unfortunately, we tend to be harmed by somebody that we know and someone that we trust. So someone in our net of 5 may be the person that is harming us, and we have 4 other people to go to. The other thing, no matter if you're 5 or 15 or 35 or 55, if you are in a relationship with someone who is trying to cut off your support system, that is a huge red flag. You only need me. I'm the only one that loves you. I'm the only one that understands you. You don't need these other people. Those are really messages we need young people to get, because we see young people getting in really unhealthy relationships, right? Net of 5. We need to have all these people. Again, this person said they loved me. That's why. Okay. Kids need to be getting love from the right people. So here's our net of 5. Again, talking to your kids, family safety night. Please take, I think I have a little envelope that says JWRC number 11 on it that has 5 of our brochures in it. Family safety night is one. Talking about safety includes all kinds of safety. Helmet, calling 911, what to do if there's a fire, what are the rules in my body, what are the rules on the internet, what are the rules if I get lost, what happens if somebody says something that makes me feel uncomfortable. We're just going to make this normal for kids. So when they're talking about being safe, all of these things apply, right? It's not just this one thing that we set kids up and it's scary. We're going to go through everything so kids know. Twice a year, so we like to say the beginning of school year and the beginning of summer, because rules may change because of schedules. And again, go over everything. Put technology away and have it be a conversation. And then throughout the year, when you're watching TV or you're watching a movie, you can, hey, what do you think just happened? You know, why do you think that person, why do you think that kid did that? You know, and having these conversations continue. It may be uncomfortable, but we're going to be the adults and we're going to do it because it's our job to keep kids safe. What if our great things to do, what would you do if this happened? And what we're going to do is we're going to set up the question, we're going to practice the skill, and then we're going to reinforce it. Because we think kids know exactly what they should do every time, but then they don't, right? And 2020 and Dateline's really good about that, you know, where they set up these kids for failure, and it just breaks my heart, right? They have the secret cameras, and it's like, I'm gonna leave now, don't open the door, right? And then ding dong, the kid's like, hello, right? And then the parents are like, ah! It's like, we need to talk about it, and we need to practice, and practice. And the 5 adults, and again, we don't want to scare kids. I don't know about you, but when I'm stressed out and scared, I don't make good decisions. And kids don't either. We want to empower them. We want to give them the right to say no if someone's making them feel uncomfortable, and the right to tell us about anything, even if it's about your body, even if it's about your body parts, and you're going to know the real names of your body parts, and you don't have to be embarrassed about it. And you can come and you can talk to me about anything. All right. You can kind of skip that one. So again, just kind of went over that. I just added Stephanie. She's our new victim assistance person, and she's here. So we went from 2 of us at Jacob Wetterling Resource Center to 3. So we're very excited. But please email us if you have, you know, questions, concerns, concern about a child, something just doesn't feel right. Adult, children, teenagers, we're willing to talk to you and help you through things. So again, thank you so much for being here.
This is the time that we've set aside for any of your formal questions that we'll answer for you. Does anybody have any questions?
Actually, 2 questions. What's the relationship between, say, completing a high school education and or IQ as impacts sexual offenders?
Sarah, can you answer that?
No idea.
I think, well,
I didn't hear the question.
The question was, is there any correlation between graduating from high school and IQ and sex offenders?
I mean, my experience is there's no discrimination factor. I mean, and when we look at teachers, they all have a college degree. Most coaches do, and in the faith community, I think most priests, pastors have a degree. Sex offenders, yeah, it's everybody, unfortunately.
And I think to generalize your question a little bit more, I think people have a greater chance at being successful in life overall if they've graduated from high school. But that's all I really can say about that subject. I've never seen any kind of research based on the question that you have.
I can talk loud enough.
We have to make sure that we get it on the video.
Now, remember, everybody, we're filming this.
Oh dear.
No. I just wanted to ask about registration on the, how many times do they have to, like if they move, or is it just once a year?
So I can explain that a little better, but the cops can also explain that really well because they keep track of everybody who's required to register that lives in their jurisdiction. So anybody in Coon Rapids, they know who they are, they know where they are. They have relationships with them, actually. But anytime there's any kind of change, so it could be a vehicle, it could be a residence, it could be a school. What am I missing?
Appearance.
Thank you. They have to register that information with law enforcement, and failure to do so is a felony. In general, they're checked on once a year to say, do you still live where you live? Unless they're a level 3 and possibly a level 2, and you can talk more about that. But law enforcement does periodic checkups on these folks as well.
Actually, I'm going to have Detective Mike Plankers from our department, who runs our predatory offender program, step up, and he can explain exactly what we do. And I would venture to say that we probably are the most assertive police department here in the county for predatory offenders. So then I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, I would say that Coon Rapids takes the predatory offender that reside in the community, seriously, and we try to be, because I think half of them, Sarah alluded to, not all of them are supervised. So ultimately, that becomes kind of our responsibility then, when they're in the registration, that we need to keep tabs on them as well. So what we do, the yearly thing, BCA mails out a yearly registration form that they have to return. And if they don't, the BCA will actually flag them as non-compliant. And if that happens, they'll help me out by saying, hey, so-and-so has not they've not sent their packet back, can you go check on them? Typically, it doesn't happen a lot because there's enough movement of different people when they change information, whether it's residency, school, phone number, like Sarah was saying, that we get out to residents about every 6 months. We do it monthly. We break up our 123 that was registered here. We break that up, so every month I have a number of officers that help me do the verifications. So a uniformed squad will go out and do the verification to make sure all their information is up to date. So that's on top of the BCA mailing. And the offenders that live in Coon Rapids know very well who I am, and they call me often to update their information or when they have questions about things. So we're very strict, so to speak, in Coon Rapids, and we take it pretty seriously, and we're on top of people. So it varies.
And we have a really good compliance rate with registration overall in the state. It's about 95% compliance rate. Usually if somebody's not compliant, it's something pretty simple that can be fixed pretty easily.
2 questions. One is, why are we not given the exact address? The other one is, why isn't he under supervision?
First, he's not under supervision because as Sarah pointed out in the PowerPoint, his sentence has been completed. So once he's done with his sentence from when he was reincarcerated, then he's no longer under supervision. That doesn't mean that he still isn't required to register. And with the exact address, I think state law will not allow us to give you the exact address.
Yeah, it's for public safety reasons, yours and his, frankly.
Okay.
Yep.
I guess in my mind, I'm thinking that since we all live within the area, and the conversations that I've been privy to from neighbors, that there's already been a declaration from one of the residents in our area about this individual and where he will be living. And so when you say public safety, does that mean that to prevent for him not having people come and stand
Harass
in front of
him?
his yes.
Yep, that's part of it. And also the bigger picture that I was talking about in the beginning of trying not to focus on him. We're able to tell you about him because he's a level 3, but focusing on him would be really not helpful in terms of safety and thinking about safety generally. Like, they're everywhere. This is the level 3 we're able to tell you about. And certainly those of you that live right there, you're going to know where he lives. I mean, I'm not fooling myself on that in any iota. You might not. But that's not the point.
Okay.
I understand that you would like to know exactly where he lives, but we just can't tell you exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then going back to our safety, can you give us some hints and direction as we should go? Because I know that quite a few of the townhouses / condos have single women living in them.
Sure.
And I think a lot of us, maybe more so than couples,
Yep.
have a lot of concerns regarding that.
And I have those same concerns. I'm a single woman living alone. I don't change my practices because a level 3's moved into the neighborhood. I'm practicing safety all the time. So whatever you're doing now, keep doing. Get some hints from your local police department if you want them. They could come over and look at your windows, look at your entrances and say, you know, you might want to tighten up some things here. There are lots of things you can do. It's easy to feel like, oh, this person's out there and now my life is in danger, or now whatever. You know, insert whatever danger scenario comes up for you most frequently. But taking a step back and going, okay, I know about this guy, right? And I know there are other people out there, and there always have been. What do you do with that information? Where do you go with it? How do you process it? How do you take care of yourself? Rather than panicking, how are you looking at it calmly, objectively, etc.? Jump in anytime.
I think that Sarah in the PowerPoint has it pretty well accurate. Don't, and I would echo what Sarah said, don't have so much tunnel vision on one person that you're losing the other people that are out there. Because they do live here. They have lived here, and they always will live here. So what I would tell you is just be aware of your surroundings, because this is the same thing I tell my wife. Like you say, I live here, I live in town. Tell my wife to be aware of her surroundings, and that if something doesn't seem right, get out of that situation. And if you're starting to notice things that make you go, that's not right, you need to call us. Okay? Whether that's a case of you see him or any person at 3 a.m. in the morning, walking through in between the townhomes down there, or in between the sets of townhomes, call us so that we know about it. We'll send cars down there, try to find the person, have a chat with them. Why are they there? I think what we're trying to tell you is with this, the education, is not only be aware of him, but be aware of just generally be aware of what's going on.
Well, I can address that personally as well, I'm sorry. But one morning I'm out walking my dog at 5:30, and there's a vehicle parked in one of the overflow, well, I can't call it overflow, visitors areas. And it was running, and it was a very cold morning, and I thought, no big deal. Then 45 minutes later, I'm back out there with the same little dog, and the vehicle's still there, it's running. I went and knocked on the window because I thought, well, what's going on? And nobody responded, so I thought, well, they went back in their condo and went to sleep. And I walk around, take a picture of the license plate, and the window rolls down and the person says, well, go ahead and call the Coon Rapids police. I'm here on whatever. And I said, sure. So I did call the Coon Rapids police, and believe me, folks, this was a fabulous experience. They were calling me in under 5 minutes to confirm what this individual was there doing, and that the Coon Rapids police were fully aware of his presence and what his business was in the area. So I've only been here since August. I was very impressed.
That's remarkable. Well, and I was here, what was it, 2 months ago, 3 months ago? And your chief said something which I think about every day when I get in my car. The most dangerous thing you're gonna do every day is get in your car and drive somewhere. And as a person alone in my car, most of the time, I'm always thinking, okay, are my doors locked? That's the first thing I do when I get in my car. I lock the doors, then I put on my seatbelt. When I go in to pay for gas, my door is locked behind me. My door is locked when I'm at the pump, okay? Because it needs to be. You know, I've been doing this work for over 20 years now, and before I started that, I did research, and I can't tell you how many files I read where someone got into someone's car when they weren't paying attention. So it's so much about paying attention, and that's exactly what you were doing. You did exactly the right thing. You took a picture of the license plate, you called. That's awesome.
Okay.
But just being aware of your surroundings and what you're doing. Sorry,
Okay.
you know, not looking at your phone while you're walking down the street, walking your dog, not listening to music. Go
Well,
ahead.
this is just a question on the letter that came out to each one of us. And it said, address 9800 block of Palm Street, Northwest, Coon Rapids. I'm on 9822. Can you see where it would shake me up a little?
Certainly, yep. Absolutely.
So therefore, it would be nice to know where that person was living.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's probably across the street. Across the street.
Yeah, yeah. I hear what you're saying, and I hear the concern, certainly.
So that's what concerned me when I opened up this letter. I thought, oh, it's right here.
Yeah. And there are others that you don't know about, that we can't tell you about, that haven't done anything yet, maybe, or they have and they haven't been caught. And so that's why we talk about try not. I know it's difficult. I know it's really difficult to not focus on this guy, but I will say that again, try not to. Who knows how long he's going to be here? You know, he might be here for a good long time. He might be gone in a month or less.
Can you tell us when he's gone?
If he's gone, he won't be on that website anymore at the 9800 block of Palm. So looking at the website every now and then, typically law enforcement's not going to have another meeting. It just isn't useful to have a whole nother meeting because frankly people wouldn't probably come. If
So
they had
what
a
you're
meeting to
saying
tell you
is
that
that
he's
you're not
gone.
going to notify us if he moves. It would be that was one of my questions. It would be our responsibility to check the website.
Yeah.
The reason for this meeting is to educate. The reason that it came about is William Meadows.
Well, the other question I have, or maybe not so much a question, but a comment, and that is, you are fully aware of the environment on this block on Palm Street. And there are a number of townhouses that back up to the pond, a big pond, where there are no safety lights unless you have a motion light, which in fact I do. But that works, but I don't, it's very easy to break into those townhouses, and I'm not just saying he would do that, but that's part of his descriptor. And that's what concerns me. I mean, I appreciate the education even from your program, but his descriptors are very specific to our neighborhood, breaking in adult women, and I think that's something that it would be nice for you to address some specifics. Another issue, and this isn't the police department's issue, but when we start talking about safety, it took all summer, and I'm not exaggerating that, from May until August to have our 2 streetlights on the west side of Palm Street replaced. I know that's a facilities problem, but we reported that both as individuals and as our association, and it took 3 months, and it was really dark out there. So whether he's in the neighborhood or not, that's a Coon Rapids issue. We can't climb the poles and change those lights when we want to. And so when we're talking about being extra cautious or just being safe, like you're saying, in some ways, the city's working it against us, and I venture to guess that one of those lights somewhere along the line is going to go out before this summer, and if it takes 3 months to get it fixed, that's not helpful. We've got to have some safety in our neighborhood that's supposed to be provided to us as taxpayers as it relates to those issues, lighting and so forth. So
That's a good thing to take up with your city council person.
I did,
Yeah, I bet you
and
did.
we got nowhere.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
I had the same problem.
So I guess I think this is a little bit more unique situation than I've been educated on sexual offenders and for, a variety of different reasons. But this is a pretty specific case, I guess, as it relates to our neighborhood and who lives in our neighborhood and the nature of our neighborhood. And yeah, we choose to live there and we choose to live by a pond, but can you give us any more suggestions or advice other than locking our car doors? Because I think if we're walking dogs and going from one building to another like we do to visit, in the middle of winter, I'm looking for safety suggestions besides locking a car door.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, having your home checked for safety, what,
I don't know what more I could do.
And that's why you might ask them to come and look and tell you.
We encourage you, we have officers that have been to, actually Officer Tom Sharon, who's standing out in the hallway there that you met on the way in, is one of our community-oriented police officers who's been through crime prevention school, who will come out and give you a premise survey. Here are the things that you can do to make your home safer, whether it's pinning locks, or pinning windows, whether it's reinforcing your door, not only your jamb, but the actual door, good quality deadbolts. You have motion detector lights, you already have that. You've done what you can do, other than if you have the wherewithal and the financial ability to get a security system on that. I can't give you the magic answer to all of that. All I can tell you is you already have people doing it. Just be aware of your surroundings. Have your phone out and take pictures of things. If you see something that is amiss, give us a call. We literally, our response to calls in the city of Coon Rapids, if it's an emergency call, it's typically under 3 minutes. If it's a regular routine call, and I say routine, something like you report that someone broke into your car and stole some change out of your car from the night before, our response is typically under 10 minutes, even on those. So we respond, and typically, let's say you're out walking your dog again at 5:30, and you call because you see someone who's out there, and it's suspicious, and they're acting suspicious, I can almost guarantee you, and it probably happened on this one, you're going to have 3 cars, maybe even more down there, checking the neighborhood for you, or checking on this person. I know that's not a lot of solace to you on your answers, but that's what I can give you right now. If you want us to come out and do a premise survey, call us. We'll come out and do it. We'll give you suggestions and recommendations on what you may do, or because some of it may be your association where they have to come out and cut bushes or things like that, where you don't maybe not have a lot of control over that, but you can have the company that's hired for landscaping do those kinds of things. Same thing with snow plowing. Keep snow banks low. That entails some more work for them, but keeping snow banks low so people can't step behind them, crouch down behind them, those kinds of things in the wintertime.
What do we call the 763 number for a home assessment? Is that the number you're?
6481.
Yep.
Yes, that's our front desk number. And I will tell you that generally we would tell you anytime you want to talk to a police officer, firefighter, or a paramedic, call 911 in Anoka County. We want you to call 911. It's faster. Because of enhanced 911, we have your address come up that way at our dispatch, so they know where the call is coming from. It's not just for emergencies in our county. We want you to call 911. It's much faster. If they're very busy up there, you'll probably be on hold for 10 seconds, because the very first thing they'll ask you is this an emergency? And you would tell them, no, you please hold. You'll be on hold for 10 seconds. They'll pick up the phone again. How can I help you?
Mr. Meadows has already moved in, right?
Yes.
Correct.
He's there.
Can you tell us if he has a vehicle or does he have an appointment?
That's information that law enforcement maintains. I don't know, honestly. I mean, he may not.
You don't
But
know?
it's not we can't say, this is his vehicle, here's the description, here's the license plate number. No. And part of that is, he might change his vehicle. And you might get fixated on a particular vehicle and not know that he's changed his vehicle. Law enforcement's going to know, and they're going to keep track of that. They maintain that information, make sure he's compliant with all his registration requirements.
What happens if he doesn't inform them of a
It's a
address
felony.
change or a car change?
So
Let me
it's a-
repeat that. If he doesn't notify law enforcement of any changes in his status, whether it's, as you saw on the slide, his vehicles, his employment, if he's going to school, any of that kind of stuff, we submit a complaint to the county attorney for a felony violating his registration.
So then does he go back into prison?
Well, that's out of our hands. That's up,
Oh.
if he's convicted of that, it's up to what the sentence of the judge says.
They call it a presumptive year in prison on a violation, but it's all up to.
The judge.
And it also is dependent on his past history, of course. You know, what's his criminal history score?
I lived in the Woodcrest area, which is right next there, and there's Parkside. I'm just wondering, I lived there for over 40 years. How safe is that area, or has it gotten more unsafe? How safe is that area to be walking at 5:30 in the morning?
I can
A
t-
lady by herself with a dog.
I
Or
can
not by yourself, you know.
I can tell you.
I would never go out in that area, even
well,
after 40 years, walking my dog at 5:30 in the morning.
I can tell you that you live in a very safe city generally, and I can't think of a neighborhood that I would not tell my wife to go walk in at any time of the night.
Is that right?
Yes. Because first of all, she's my wife, and I wouldn't put her in danger. But second of all, I can't. There's no neighborhood that I would not have her go walk in.
In the city of Coon Rapids?
In the city of Coon Rapids.
So there is no neighborhood that is really a bad criminal neighborhood
No.
in the city of Coon Rapids?
No.
Drastically worse than others. No, I mean, there's crime stats all over, and it's pretty balanced.
Those of us who live by the pond and have ducks and geese traveling back and forth, we have a lot of strange people that are walking past my window. And I don't know that I can discriminate, say this is bad and that is good, you know?
Well, I can tell you, yes, it's probably your open space in your townhomes there. But I always go back to it's kind of apt here. As a Supreme Court justice once said about pornography, I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it. So you're going to know when it's odd. I'll give you an example. Instead of people just walking through all the time or coming in and feeding the geese and ducks popcorn, instead of looking at the ducks, they seem to be turning around looking into your windows from the pond. That would be a light bulb going off saying, this is not appropriate, and you should call us. So I go back to, you're going to know it when you see it. And don't let that little voice in your head say, I don't want to bother the police, or you're probably doing nothing. Call us.
Now I will.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're really good at that little voice in the head going, oh, it's probably nothing. Oh, and don't listen to that voice, because if you see something that doesn't look right.
It's like, I know something's going on. No, I just want to say, I'm guessing that more people live where you guys than are here right now. So please go back and have this discussion, and please, it's one block, but know everybody on that block and tell everybody and say, not to say, oh my gosh, the boogeyman's moving in, but this is what's going on, and we're going to up our safety. We want everybody to be on the lookout. We want everyone to be aware, and anyone that sees something, please call. So it's not just you guys feeling like this is on me, that it's on, everyone that lives there being part of a community and everybody watching and looking.
Yeah, please take some of the handouts and give them to people. There's one with a bunch of online resources. There's one about online safety, et cetera, et cetera. Jacob Wetterling Resource Center has a lot of great materials there, so they're here for you to take. Don't feel like you're limited to just taking one. If you've got people that you think would benefit from these handouts, please bring them to them.
And I'll make a plug for our website. You can go onto our website and you can find the crime map for our city on there. Or you can download from Bear Analytics their public interface. It's iOS or Android or a regular computer, and you can go on there and set your own parameters on what you want to see for dates and types of crimes and stuff, so you can look on there yourself. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.